Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are so excited to have a conversation today with Kyle, who is a senior Scrum Master at Caesars Entertainment. And Kyle just went through an amazing and very fast job search recently, and we are dying to know all about it. I'm Season, and I'm an Agile coach with Agile Learning Labs. Chris, who are you?
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm a Scrum trainer and Agile coach at Agile Learning Labs.
And Kyle, do you want to give us an intro?
Yeah. I'm Kyle, senior Scrum Master at Caesars Entertainment, like Season said. I've been in the space for about 10 years, roughly. Wow. Worked at all sorts of different companies and cultures. And yeah, I'm sure we'll dive more into it. So,
really looking forward to that. By the way, if you're in the event, if you are joining us live, feel free to use chat to ask any questions, make any comments. If you want us to follow up on things, we are keeping an eye on it. So please feel free to join in. We're happy to have you. So Kyle, how did you get into the world of Agile and being a Scrum Master?
Yeah, I love this question because it's so unique and like personal for everybody, right? Like it's just everyone's path is so different. For me, I was working at DreamWorks Animation in Redwood City, California, which is in Northern California. And I was just working as I got a job as like a technology coordinator, as kind of just like a junior project manager working with this lady, and had, that's how I got my foray into tech, and then heard about kind of this new kind of subsidiary that was being created at DreamWorks that was partnering with Nike. And they were running this thing or kind of trying to dive into this thing called Agile. And they had like this senior Agile coach that got hired. I think he was at like Accenture or just one of the big consulting companies, and just worked very closely with him and really got to learn about Scrum and being a Scrum Master. And he was doing all sorts of cool stuff, user story mapping and so on and so forth. So that's where I kind of really got my first foray into it. And then really kind of just bounced from company to company. I got more and more experience at different places. And yeah.
Wow. Wait, DreamWorks. I don't know if you know this, but my boyfriend is actually an animator. I'm super into that space. What was it like working there?
It was awesome. It was a cool company, right? I mean, just to be able to like go to a movie theater and see like something that, you were kind of indirectly supporting, right? It was awesome to say the least. And just like you were mentioning about your boyfriend, so much talent, right? Just so many amazing, talented people. It was a great experience.
Can you tell us about some of those companies that you worked for, what your experience was like there?
Oh, yeah. Across the gamut, right? You and I have talked about Disney. So I worked at Disney for a short stint. I worked at a startup called Loot Crate down in Los Angeles. It was an e-commerce company. Worked very briefly at Red Bull. Worked at Splunk. Has lots of contracting gigs, lots of short-term contracting gigs. And Splunk. Where else did I go? Certainly Atlassian for about 3 years. Before Atlassian, I was at a company called Invitae, which is a biotech company. And now I'm at Caesars Entertainment.
Wow, that is all over the map. Are there any kind of common threads into how you got into these different companies?
Yeah. I mean, most of it was through LinkedIn, right? Through recruiters reaching out to me, going like, "Hey, you meet the experience I'm looking for the Scrum Master role." And just each time I was swayed by more money, if I'm just being totally honest, right? So for the first, probably 5 to 7 years of my career as a Scrum Master, each time it was, a recruiter reaching out and being like, "Hey, I got this contract role at X company, and we're willing to pay you X hourly rate." And it was a nice bump from where I currently was. So I was like, yes, I'm very interested in learning more. So,
wow. So LinkedIn is the common thread for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely like LinkedIn is like, that is what I leveraged. I'm even trying to just think about like, have any of these jobs not come through LinkedIn? I don't even think I've ever singly like applied for a single role like on a company's website and like gone through like a more traditional route. It's always been some recruiter hits me up on LinkedIn, messages me, one thing leads to another.
So what? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
So I'm based on that. I'm really curious about what tips you would have for like someone's LinkedIn profile, right? There's something about the way you've got your profile set up. Hey, everybody, go check out his profile. But what do you think of the things that were getting you noticed?
Man, that's a good question, Chris. I've looked at some other profiles and it just like blows me out of the water. Like, no doubt, like tons of detail, tons of information. Just really like people have really kind of taken like that next step in making their profile shine. I could maybe, if I could pinpoint something, maybe it has to do with maybe like the intro in my LinkedIn is like done well. Honestly, Chris, I think it just kind of comes down to like years of experience, right? Recruiters are just like doing some kind of query, some kind of search function, and they're looking for the keyword Scrum Master, Agile Coach, whatever, Program Manager, and it goes boom. Here's Kyle, and he's got 10 years, right?
So your intro, what is Scrum Master, Program Manager, Project Manager, Agile Coach? Awesome. Like, is it stuffed with keywords? Like, what are you doing here? What's the
I know
magic?
it's like you guys are looking for like the secret sauce, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, like my profile's probably not even that good. Like I can promise you, there's a lot better profiles out there. Yeah, I mean, for sure, there's a lot of keywords kind of in that first intro period, that first intro block. I have it completely filled out, right? I start with the basics, right? Start with the basics, the whole thing filled out. Make sure that this is for people that are looking for jobs right now. We kind of dovetail into some of these other questions, and yeah, I mean, start there, right? Start looking at other profiles that you want to emulate that look really good, and like make sure that you're spending time filling that out, making it robust and complete, for sure.
That's amazing. How often? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, so I got curious, right? I'm like, okay, I got to really take a look at his profile now. And a couple of things that I noticed right away about it is you do have a number of endorsements. And any thoughts or secrets about how that came to be? Did people just out of the blue voluntarily send you their endorsement, or did you reach out to people you had worked with and say, hey, would you be willing? Like, how'd you get those? Because that's certainly something that caught my eye.
Yeah. So it's funny you bring that up, right? And the reason why I didn't even think about that is I would say probably about 80% of those endorsements or like the recommendation section just recently happened. So it's like the majority of my career has not included those endorsements. Like recruiters reaching out to me and being like, hey, I got this job. Like, do you want, are you interested? Has not included that information on there. So that was when I got laid off from Atlassian. That was probably one of the most probably just kind of heartwarming experiences to make a kind of a bad situation a lot easier and softer. Was I had so many people reach out to me from Atlassian, and I were just like, so sorry what happened. Like here's an endorsement, here's a recommendation. Like just so many people reached out, just like, hey, here's a job like posting, like, let me know what you think. I can make an introduction. There was a ton of people, and yeah, a lot of those endorsements because of the Atlassian layoff.
So tell us more about that painful layoff experience. I'm so sorry, but I'm telling you, every time I'm on LinkedIn, I'm seeing more and more people going through layoffs. And I'm curious, can you tell us more about what that was like for you?
Yeah. Just pretty much got on a call with Alice, who you know who that is, Season, and all the other people that report up to Pauline, and pretty much was like, hey, you either got an email that said you survived or did not survive, and unfortunately, it was like I think it was like 16 out of 20 people of our team, which was Scrum Masters, Program Managers, were let go from our team. And so, yeah, I was just happened to be one of those roughly 16 people.
We have a comment here in chat, and it looks like it is related to the endorsements that you have received. That's because you are amazing, Kyle.
Thank you, Jorge. No, Jorge's the best. I loved working with him. He's fantastic. Really strong, agile mind. He'd be another great person to for this interview because he also landed a job really quickly. So
nice.
Yeah,
maybe
he's got a secret sauce for his LinkedIn profile since I couldn't come up with anything.
So speaking of layoffs and finding a job, what was that process like? What did you do once you heard the news?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the secret sauce is like you just need to know Season and have her be in your network, and then she just sends you. I don't know how many jobs did you send me, like 3? Or just like people,
as many as I could find.
Yeah, it was just nonstop, like Season, just like I mean, it was great, right? I was like, this is like I had it was so like I had to start messaging Season when I finally reached out to the people that she sent me just to like hold myself accountable. Like, hey, here's a list of like 10 people I still haven't talked to yet that Season went out of her way to message me about. I'm like, hey, Season, okay, I talked to this person and then talked to that person. There's just a checklist for me, right? Yeah, I mean, so here, the way I think about this is you want to have your network as strong as possible when things like this happen. Right? Mm-hmm. It's probably obvious, right? But you want to spend the time building that network, really strengthening it before something like this happens, right? It's like your safety net in your finances, right? You want to have something ready to go before something bad like this happens. And so, it may be cliche, but you want to provide more value for people, right? You want to give more than you take, whether it's getting on a phone call to talk about your experience at a company, whether it's, hey, a recruiter hits you up and you're like, hey, I'm not looking right now, but I know this person is looking. Let me send you their contact information. It's doing all those little things day in and day out where people will remember you and you're just strengthening your network. And then you can lean on that, right? When something like a layoff happens, when something bad happens, that's unexpected, you can really start to kind of dive into that.
So LinkedIn and networking, 2 ingredients in the secret sauce. What was your interview experience like with Caesars Entertainment? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I met a recruiter. So I just pretty much got laid off and then went straight into just find a job mode, right? I mean, I was probably I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but this is just what I did. I was probably on LinkedIn for probably like 8 to 10 hours a day, just like going back, looking through old messages on LinkedIn and hitting up old recruiters and just anyone that had any kind of potential connection to try to find a job. And so obviously turned my status to, open to work, and then had this random recruiter hit me up. And kind of one thing led to another, him and I talking, and I guess I started with a lady. Her name's Madeline, and then from there, got connected with Caesars. Had an initial phone screen. Then after the phone screen, had 2 Zoom-based interviews, and the first one was directly with the hiring manager, and then the second one was with his boss and another guy. He's like kind of a manager within product. And so talked to those 3 individuals over Zoom in 2 separate sessions. And then I got an offer.
Nice. What kind of questions were they asking you during the interviews?
Yeah. So this was an interesting one because like this can span the gamut, like what you get asked in the Scrum interview. This is always very interesting to me to see how this plays out, right? Like I've been in, I promise I'll answer your question, but like I've been in interviews where it's like, how long are your sprints, right? Like, or what are the Scrum ceremonies, right?
Oh.
And I'm just like, I get you're trying to like, vet my base knowledge. I understand that, but it's not really understanding like who I am as a Scrum Master, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the thing I appreciated about Caesars was the hiring manager. He was really like, all right, what is good Scrum to you, right? Like describe that to me, right? Or like, how have you like optimized a team, right? Tell me about a time when you were working with a team that wasn't performing well and you got them to a better state, or what are the things you look for when you start working with a new team? So it was good. So like he clearly had some experience with agile, with working with agile teams, and he asked really good questions to kind of really try to like get to the heart of how I think about it. So it was good.
Wow, that's amazing and so very rare. As you mentioned, I've had some interesting interviews and questions, but yeah, you can kind of tell they don't have to, if they fully understand and are doing Scrum and Agile ways of working really, really well, they're probably not in the market for a Scrum Master or an Agile coach, but at least having that willingness to understand and ask those questions that can really get to the heart of who a Scrum Master will be, like that says a lot about that manager in the company.
For
So
sure.
when did you start working there? What day are you on?
This is like roughly 2 months. I
Wow.
was, what was it, like April 10th, roughly,
Mhm.
whatever that Monday is, right in there. So yeah. So June 6th. Yeah, so roughly 2 months.
How is the onboarding for you? Oh no, there's a laugh. Is that a good laugh or a bad laugh?
Yeah. So this is a pretty interesting role, right? So especially when you kind of compare, which we all naturally do, kind of compare my experience at Atlassian versus going to Caesars, right? So Atlassian, very buttoned up, big company. I mean, I guess you could say the same about Caesars, right? They're both publicly traded, worth billions of dollars. But Atlassian, like lots of time, creating this big elaborate onboarding plan. It was very buttoned up, I guess, right? It's just the quick way to say it. But with Caesars, I am working in an org called Digital Product, and it is a little startup within Caesars. There's 6 teams. There's probably roughly, I don't know, close to 100 people, probably like 80 people, something like that. And it's just this senior vice president, right, who's my manager's manager, senior vice president who just kind of owns it all, right? And he has grown and he has complete autonomy, which is pretty interesting to kind of just run things how he sees fit. And he works directly with my manager. My manager, clearly knows, kind of the ins and outs with agile, has really a lot of experience with working with agile teams and trying to help cultures be more agile. So those two are kind of setting the culture, setting the tone, and it's been interesting to work in this little bubble of Caesars, right? The rest of Caesars is just this huge conglomerate, not very agile to say the least, and Digital Product is working completely different than the rest of Caesars. So very long-winded. The onboarding was pretty much just like me discovering stuff and kind of just finding stuff and figuring stuff out on my own. That's pretty much what it was.
How are you liking the job so far? I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of trust and autonomy to make changes.
Yeah, this is an interesting role. It's interesting because, like, as you're aware, each Scrum Master role kind of falls within the spectrum of like how much is it actually coaching and Scrum Mastering, and how much is it actually like program management, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe other things, right?
Yeah.
And so this one is actually interesting because it leans very, very heavy on the like Scrum Master coaching, which is great, right? But I guess I'm just not totally used to it. I'm always used to this kind of hybrid type of role, right? So it's been great because there's that. So it's a much more, I guess you could say, pure Scrum Master role.
Mm-hmm.
everyone I work with on the team is all seniors. It's all senior engineers, senior product owner, senior UX designer. So people like they get it. They've been around the block. They know, they at least have some idea of what Scrum is. So yeah, it's been good. It's been good so far.
That makes me think of something, which is, you mentioned some of your past roles were kind of hybrid, right? You're a Scrum Master, but you're also doing some program management kind of stuff. When those roles were pitched to you, or when you saw the posting or whatever it was, what did they say they were looking for? Was it a Scrum Master job ad? Was it a program manager job ad? Was it like, how was it initially presented?
Yeah, good question, Chris. Some were really good about it. Some were just like, hey, this is what it is. It is like, we expect you to be with the team embedded, but also doing like status reports and updates, presenting burn downs, presenting this, right? Doing this kind of communication, which I guess I would consider more, PGM type of work, creating timelines, things like that. So some were like, were really fair and accurate. Like, this is what we want. Others were like, oh no, this is like a really pure Scrum Master role. This is where you're gonna really just be able to do only Scrum Mastering stuff. Then you take a look under the hood, and it's like, I can't do any Scrum. I can do very, very little of what a Scrum Master should actually be doing. So it varies.
Great question. The project manager / Scrum Master. I think my title at Atlassian was Program Manager Agile Scrum Master. Was that yours, Kyle?
Yeah. They had like the slash, right? The hybrid.
Oh yeah.
Like Scrum Master / Program Manager.
You never know. But you mentioned senior, being surrounded by senior engineers, and you yourself are a senior Scrum Master. What is the journey like from being kind of entry level or a little more experienced Scrum Master getting to senior?
Yeah. I think in a few words, it can be really challenging and really, really difficult. I think this starts to like draw into like the last thing we want to talk about, which was like a lot of the like mindfulness practices. But yeah, it's also extremely rewarding once your mind starts to kind of understand that like you can empower people, you can like give full autonomy to people, you can even agree with people that want to do crazy shit that makes no sense, and like the way that they want to work is like completely dysfunctional, but like you don't zap away their autonomy, right? You don't take away their empowerment. You let the team make that decision, but then you kind of chip away at it through coaching questions, the Scrum Mastering role, Scrum Mastering skills. So I that took a long time for me to understand that, right? I thought in the beginning, look, I've read all these books, I've listened to all these podcasts, I have a few years of experience, I know what I'm doing. I understand what the content is, but you don't know what you're doing. And it's I think in the Scrum guide, I think they say something like, it's easy to understand, but difficult to do, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. And so that rings very true, that it just takes a long time. And I think it's a lot. I think Lisa Atkins, like her view on all this is beautiful. It's perfect. It's a lot of it's self-mastery, right? It's a lot of just mastering yourself, understanding yourself. Because then once you kind of go down that path, then your ability to connect with people, to interact with people, it goes so much better. So
yeah, well said. And Lisa Atkins, we've had her on Scrum Professionals Meetup. She's spoken, friend of Agile Learning Labs, big fan.
Absolutely. We go way back.
She's amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, just to throw out a couple others, Alan Halub, if you know him on LinkedIn, he's a total contrarian. I love his takes. Joshua Karievsky, here I'll give a shout out to his book.
Nice.
I'll give a shout out to his book. It's on my backlog still to read, The Joy of Humility. Anyways, yeah.
It's interesting what you said. It feels like the more we do this, or I guess the more senior we become, it's a mix of knowing, we feel like we know less what we're doing. The more we do this and the more able we are to accept that. And also the more that we step back too. We get more senior, we get more experience, we're more comfortable with that stepping back. And it can kind of feel like we're doing less in a way, but it takes more to do less. It's so much harder than when you first start out and you, like you said, you feel like you have all the answers and you can tell people what to do. And now it's like, I have to let people do what they're going to do and kind of coach them and not control them. It's hard.
Yes.
I think for me, so much of that has been the change from being attached to outcomes and letting go of that. And really at two levels. And I'll be interested to hear, Kyle, if your experience is similar, different, if you have what your perspective is. I think very early on, I was attached to outcomes such as, oh, we hit our date, or the product's good, or those sorts of things. And that led me to, try to push for the things that I thought was right and I thought we should do in order for, that level of outcome to happen. And then I think in my journey, I started to let go of that and go, okay, right, the team's supposed to do that. And then the outcomes I started to be more attached to were like, oh, is this a healthy team? And I think that was a healthier outcome to be attached to. But still, sometimes I would trip on myself because I'm like, oh my God, the team's not behaving in a healthy way. I have to fix this. Otherwise, it'll be the wrong outcome. And ironically, if the goal is a healthy team, sometimes you have to let them do some things that aren't so healthy. And not just like, okay, we'll go do it, I don't care. But it's like, all right, how am I going to catch them after this? Right? Or how am I going to turn this into a learning experience as opposed to how can I head this off at the pass?
Yeah.
And Kyle, I think that goes into your work on mindfulness too. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. I think, Chris, what you said was perfect. It was awesome. I think in this role, and you see it all the time, right? You just talk to colleagues, fellow Scrum Masters, and you see it because you've been through it. You understand it, that it's we have this vision for how the team should function, should operate, and it's attachment. It's like you were just saying, right? And how strong that attachment is, how strong that vision is, can lead to a lot of dysfunction in how you present yourself to the team, how you communicate with them, how you interact with them. And and it's just all about understanding when you're hanging on to that vision, or, hey, how come they're not doing things the way that I want them to do it? Or how come I know that I'm right, so let's do it the way that I want it, right? Or I want to control, right? All those things just lead to you as the coach, as the Scrum Master, presenting yourself and interacting with them in a dysfunctional way. That can ultimately cause resentment. It can cause, you could, as other people say in the space, you're a dead Scrum Master, right? People don't give a shit what you have to say. That's what it leads to. And now to kind of go back to season, all of that, figuring all of that out was through a lot of the mindfulness practices that I do on a daily basis, right? Was figuring out that holy shit, all of these things that I really want are causing me to behave in a way that's counterintuitive. And if I just kind of let go of that, still have the goal, still put effort in trying to hit the goal, and be there with the team. It's not that I don't care. Like, I'm there with the team. I'm putting effort with the team, and I have the goal in mind, but I'm not clinging to it. And I'm still trying to figure out ways to influence and coach without totally just like trying to control and without totally taking away their autonomy.
Exactly. Again, it's that mindfulness, it's that healthiness, the mental health. And we do have a question in chat. So Julie is curious. We were talking about maybe unhealthy teams or unhealthy practices that we've seen in teams that sometimes we have to kind of just let it play out. Can we think of an example that we've seen in our practice that is an example of an unhealthy team or practice?
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of probably take this in all sorts of different directions, right? So you can look at like, you could just look at like kind of like the tactical, like the Scrum ceremonies, right? So if a team is in stand-up, right? And I'm sure people have experienced this before. They're in stand-up and the stand-up is going for an hour. It becomes a status update, right? So that would be something that's probably like an unhealthy tactical execution of a stand-up ceremony, right? And you could probably go down look at every single ceremony, retros, planning, so on and so forth. Like, are we hitting the goal of that? Are we achieving what we ultimately are hoping to get out of that ceremony? So those would be kind of some unhealthy practices. But I think what's probably more important than that, what's bigger than that, is looking at the team culture and kind of looking at like where the values of the team, right? Like, how often are people asking for help, right? How often do people show empathy towards one another? How often are people vulnerable with one another? So like an unhealthy practice might be just people are just not engaged, right? People are kind of checked out. People don't care. Another unhealthy practice might be, people are constantly, not being able to express themselves fully, or we can't have conflicting ideas because it's just not a healthy place to fail. Things like that could be unhealthy practices that ultimately don't lead to your team's culture flourishing and being able to get to higher levels of performance.
And it's something that we can't always control or address, or it's something that we may be able to help the team kind of be aware of themselves, but we don't necessarily have to be the one going like, hey, nobody's speaking up or feeling vulnerable. But we do have the power to provide these safe spaces as coaches for people to voice their concerns or have that conflict. And that's, I think, what's really cool about our roles.
And we have the power to go first as well, right? We have
Which
the
is
power.
terrifying sometimes.
For sure. But like, we have the opportunity to be the one to go, hey, season, like, I could really use some help with this. Do you mind? After stand up, like, can you help me with this? Or to be like, share something personal about yourself. And you will see, you start with yourself, and then you go figure out who are the influential people on the team. Who is the tech lead, or who are the people that have the most vocal influence on the team? Go meet with them one-on-one and start kind of talking through these things, right? Start talking through like, hey, I'm gonna throw the challenge flag out at you. You're one of the influential leaders on the team. I'm gonna challenge you to ask for help, right? I get you're a super smart engineer. You know your craft, you know your stuff, but I'm going to challenge you to ask for help, to offer help, and just start working with them, right? And you will see just beauty play out where it just proliferates throughout the team culture.
Absolutely.
And if I may, I really love that particular example. A friend of mine, a guy we work with from time to time, Llewellyn Falco, one of his little informal metrics he uses when he's evaluating how healthy a team is when he goes in is he asks people, in the last week, how many times did you ask for help? So it isn't how many times did you help other people, it's how many times did you ask for help. And he definitely sees a correlation between teams where people are asking for help, and those are the teams that are healthier and perform better.
Incredibly powerful. Well, Kyle, Chris, chat, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we have not covered tonight?
I don't have anything off the top of my head.
I,
I feel for, if there's people on the call right now that are job hunting, that have been, impacted by all the tech layoffs. I feel you for that. I feel for you on that one. I was kind of thinking about this a little bit more before I joined the call. I was thinking about this earlier, right? Because it's like, okay, great, Kyle. Like, you're telling me have a strong network, right? Or you're telling me like put in the work before all this happens, and that's not very like actionable, right? I can't really take anything away from that right now, right? So I was kind of thinking about this a little bit more about like, if I could, like, what would I do if I was in the position of like I'm looking for a job, I just don't really have the network, and I need some help, right? So I think you got to get creative, right? And there's so many people right now, as you can see on LinkedIn, that are applying for jobs, directly through LinkedIn, through like that easy application. There's God knows how many people that are going to companies' websites and applying for jobs on their website. And so it's just, you're in a sea of applications. This is what I would do. I would try to figure out how to find out who is the hiring manager for these roles, right? So you see, I'm just going to use a company, Google. Okay, Google has some role that you're interested in, some program manager role that you're interested in. How can you figure out through LinkedIn, through social media, through some way of kind of discovering, this is reasonably the person that could be the hiring manager for this role? Reach out to them, like just cold DM them, right? Go on their social media, find something interesting about them, find something that you can connect with them about. Like, oh, I see you like to blog about dogs, right? Send a cold DM to them and mention that in the DM, and then be like, oh, and by the way, like, I'm also, trying to I'm looking for new opportunities, blah, blah, blah. You're going to get a lot of failures. You're going to get a lot of non-responses, but you got to, I think in this environment, especially with the program manager, scrum master role, which has been severely impacted. You just look at company after company that's just specifically targeting that function for layoffs. I think you got to get creative if just the typical normal route of like go to company website and apply, hit the easy apply on LinkedIn is not working for you. So just hopefully that's one actionable thing that someone could take away from this if they're looking for a job.
Yeah, I've done something similar. It wasn't a manager, but it was a recruiter with a company. And I know they're super busy and not always the direct path to a role, but I just said like, hey, I saw this role. I saw you'd posted about it. And the recruiter said, oh yeah, not my role, but here's the recruiter that is going for this role. And I struck up a conversation with them. It led to an interview. Yeah, like you said, get creative, and people will not respond to you, or they might respond in a way that's not what you were expecting, but then sometimes you really do strike gold. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
It just takes one opportunity, usually one yes, right? That's it.
Exactly.
Or like I said earlier, just be connected with Season on LinkedIn.
I'll do my best to send you roles. I mean, Kyle, you did the same thing for me when I had left a job that I was not happy with. You sent so many things my way, and I met a lot of people through that too. And that is what is so cool about this Agile community is we really are in this to help people. So supportive. Just, yeah, we're blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be remiss if I didn't do a couple of plugs where people could build their community. So one would be our Agile Learning Labs community on LinkedIn. And the other one would be our meetup group, Scrum Professionals Meetup. So check those two out, and great opportunities there to build your network, meet people, make connections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you're not following Kyle on LinkedIn, please do. Kyle, I've been loving your recent post really about mental health, mindfulness, taking care of yourself. I think the world needs that more than ever, and I'm really grateful to you for putting that out there. So thank you. And grateful for you joining tonight too. I'm so excited for your new role. It sounds amazing, and good luck to you on that.
Yeah, Steve and Chris, thanks for having me. This was a fantastic chat. I really appreciate all the insightful questions. And thanks you very much. So thank you for having me.
Cool.
Hey,
Thank
thanks
you.
for hanging out with us.
And thank you, LinkedIn. Have a great night.